Hello, everyone. My name's Charles Patterson. My company is Exec Security TSCM. We provide electronic countermeasure sweeps, or TSCM services, to help protect businesses and corporations from threats of spying and corporate espionage. And we've been in this field for over 25 years. Recently, we had some instances where we had to sweep a lot of restrooms. So I put together this presentation um, to help. There's a lot of different levels you can go to in sweeps, but um, this may give you some good information, hopefully, stuff you could use perhaps in your own facilities or in consulting with others. So let me see how this is going. There we go. So cameras obviously create a serious privacy issue. There, you can read about them almost every day in the news. If you just do a little Google search, some of the stories are quite surprising that come up. But a lot of problems can come from it for where a company is concerned. There's embarrassment, but there's also the legal problems. In some cases, it could even be videos being used for blackmail or extortion. Something hits the news, you're going to have loss of trust from employees and customers, a PR nightmare, you know. Here's a class action lawsuit came against this rabbi, and then there was another case, 2 million awarded to two women who were secretly videotaped at their workplace. So there's a lot of concerns. Cameras are available anywhere these days because Amazon or a lot of online stores, you don't have to go hunting. And they can take all different kinds of shapes. Now, this has been going on for a long time, obviously. Recently, the technology has made it, a lot more accessible. But this may be one of the earliest, 1893. They developed a camera that could poke through a buttonhole in your vest and took film pictures. Cameras can turn up anywhere, from your business, fitness center, hotels, government offices. There's one here it was in an airplane bathroom. And an FBI contractor hid one under a coworker's desk. This goes into the dumb criminal category, I think. Something to consider is that your existing CCTV can also become a problem. Who has access to the cameras? Where are the cameras located? This was last year in Jackson County, Alabama. They had cameras installed after there was an incident, but somebody filed a complaint that one of the cameras was being used inappropriately. Articles didn't really give the details, but you see that the commission chairman resigned, vaguely citing health reasons. It's hard to know exactly what happened, but you don't want this to happen at your place. Perpetrators are not often caught. A lot of times cameras are they're put in, especially the ones that are just recording, maybe put in for a short time and taken out. So some of them are not that easy to catch, but it could be anyone. Could be a teacher, could be a student, could be your janitor, employees, executives. Executives are not, out of the picture. I think if your doctor looks like this guy, you might have concerns. So what would happen at your facility? Our client that we had worked with already for quite a while had a camera discovered in a women's locker room. So it also hit the news just before a board meeting they were having. So it created a little bit of concern. They said, "We were shocked and disappointed to learn about this invasion of privacy. Once we were alerted to the issue, we immediately launched an internal investigation." So what's important here is to think about how you can respond, similar to when you hear about a cybersecurity uh, breach. How quickly can people respond, and can they respond appropriately? So in this case, they said the company is now searching its North American offices for any other signs of hidden cameras. That's because they were able to call us. We were the ones that had to go search all of their bathrooms for them. Here's the things we're going to be looking at tonight. Preparation. How can you be best prepared? Understanding the threats, develop a plan, tools and some techniques that you can use. Also think about the areas that present a concern, areas where privacy may be expected, etc. And I will also have some examples to look at. When an incident occurs, you should be able to respond immediately. To do that, you're going to have to thought about a little bit ahead of time. Have clear policies in place. Use of cameras, video, cell phone cameras at your workplace. There should be a policy about that, and it should be enforced. Consider all the areas that would have privacy expectations. And as I mentioned, consider your existing CCTV. Have you taken proactive steps? That could be important if something does go to court. We recommend a professional sweep initially for corporate concern and any high profile situation, because that can demonstrate due diligence, provide good documentation, also provides peace of mind for a number of your departments, human resources, legal department, and so forth. It's good to establish a baseline for future reference. Also, whenever we do a sweep, even though we try to do things kind of discreetly, people know it's being done. So if employees recognize that you're taking it seriously, they may be less likely to, commit one of these problems. Plus, it's good to know who to call on if something does occur, if there is an incident. Let's take a look at the threats. If you've been in the security field for a while, you understand a lot of this. They could be made to look like anything. Spy shops have been selling this stuff for quite a while. Some could be a little more interesting. Here, camera is put into a data and telecom outlet, camera inside a water bottle. The camera looks through, I believe there's a little hole in the front of the bottle or on some part of the label that the camera sees through. They can, chargers are very popular. You can get these things with Wi-Fi capability, cellular transmitters, and some of them just have self-contained video recorders. So these little USB chargers with the camera inside, if it just records, the way it gets used is it just gets plugged into an outlet, and then it starts recording right away. And then later on, the perpetrator goes and removes it, and he can download the recording. But as I said, some of them have cellular transmitters, and they can be very hard to distinguish unless you look very closely. Electric outlets. I was just talking to a colleague of mine. He just had a case in New York City where he found 5 hidden cameras in a lady's apartment. She's going through a divorce. And one of them was an electric outlet. And this one, the grounding plug part had the camera in it. And in the case my colleague was dealing with, it turns out the husband was also the landlord for the building. So now they're concerned that he may have installed some in other apartments as well. A little shot from B&H Photo. These are just some stuff from Manhattan. $50 for a watch with a camera in it, $30 for a key fob. I think on Amazon they'll be a lot cheaper even. So the threat is there. The threat is out there. The important first step is to have a good plan, particularly if you have a lot of areas to cover, as we did when we had to visit 3 different buildings. So consider all the different areas that may be a concern: restrooms, locker room, fitness center, mother's nursing area. A lot of corporate offices have room for nursing mothers. Any other private area, also, janitors, closets, things like that. Floor plans and checklists, and schedule enough time to be thorough. Floor plan, you also have to walk around a little bit. On this floor plan, this was one of the floors we were looking at, there were 7 restrooms. In the main lobby had 2 large restrooms. Then there was kind of a meeting area in one place, a workforce area in another place. But there was one at the top of the screen that was out at the loading dock. So it's just, you just want to try to be as thorough as possible. And consider other rooms. Here on this one, there was clearly 4 main restrooms, but there was also a nursing room and a handicap restroom and the janitor's closet, which was in between the ladies' room and the handicap restroom. Part of the plan is what we always try to do is to have a good checklist, even if it's just scribbled down on a piece of paper. Especially if you have a lot of areas to check, they can start looking very similar after a while. I think we did a total of 70 restrooms. So over the course of 2 weekends. So you can imagine after a while, the walls start to look very similar. But we would, list each room, each floor, each area. And then also on the list, we would take the time to figure out what are the areas we want to check in each room. By putting them on the list, not every room had lighting that we needed to be worried about, or not all of them had, sinks that we were concerned about. But we put it on the list so that once we were done a room, we would go back, look at the list and say, was this a concern? Was there something that we needed to look at or not? So we're going to look into some of the different tools and techniques. First, observation using your eyes, as with a lot of security, using your eyes and ears, but in this case, your eyes is very important. We'll cover some of the basic tools. You need physical access. So you need to know if there's rooms that are locked that maybe you need to request, keys for. We'll look at some electronic tools, and we'll look at some of the more advanced tools and techniques as well. And don't forget, especially nowadays, everybody's thinking about it anyway, but if you're going to be hitting a lot of restrooms, you're going to want gloves, you're going to want maybe some sanitary wipes. And then we made use of signage and like a cone to help keep anybody from wandering in on us while we're working. So observation, you want to look carefully in each area. Where could a camera be located? Where would be a place a camera could be hidden? If you look at look around the room, you look at the ceiling, look at what the furniture is. If it's a locker room like this, you may want to look and see if there's, air ducts. Are they exposed to any private area? Toilet stalls here, the air vents pointed down into the toilet stalls. So it's an area to be concerned about. Are there smoke detectors or other kinds of detectors that might be, misused or have a camera hidden in them? Here's just a little example. I just set this up in my own bookshelf. By looking carefully, you're also looking to see something might be in plain sight and you just don't realize it. There's a camera on this bookshelf. It's a small little recording camera. It cost $20 at Bed Bath & Beyond. They had a big sale just before Christmas. So physical inspection is a tedious part, but probably the most important part. Tools are going to be what you would expect. You want flashlight, good flashlight, screwdrivers with security bits, a good ladder, mirrors. We purchased some truck rear view mirrors to mount on the side of a truck, and added our own pole attachment to it. So that was very handy. It's, convex mirror. Inspection cameras are also useful. Some are available rather inexpensively now that hook up to a cell phone. And then there's others that are a little more industrial grade. You can actually find them at Home Depot and so forth now, but that could be helpful if there's areas hard to reach. Sometimes you can look and you can say, well, I don't really think there's a way for a camera to be underneath the sink. Maybe there's no view there for it. But one of the things to consider is if a camera has a power supply attached, then where are the electric outlets and where does that power supply connect to? Ceilings, the pipe chase, we opened up the hatch. This one was large enough we could actually put our head in and with a flashlight, but having a camera on a pole was also helpful to see certain areas. Look at some electronic tools. Some of these you may have seen or you may even have. Lens detection, thermal imaging, radio signals, and Wi-Fi. So this is called, the principle is called retroreflection. It's a tongue twister, but you may have seen these devices or similar ones with the flashing red LEDs. Every camera, by nature of the camera, it has a lens, right? You can see in these pictures. Lenses will reflect light. So this is the principle of it. Light shining in it at one angle will be reflected 180 degrees out. It's the principle on reflective signs, such as the old stop signs that had the glass beads in them. So this principle can be used to help identify camera lenses, because the camera lens works similarly. If you're shining a light directly into it, you'll see a reflection coming directly back at you. That's why these little viewers have a little window to look through, and having the red tint, I don't know if it really helps or not. I think it maybe looks cool, but there's a little reflection coming back out. Here's a close-up example shot through the filter. Some of them have there are some that have a few more features, but you don't necessarily need those. Like, these are some Russian versions that are upwards of a few $1,000s and sophisticated, and they probably work very well. But another technique is just to use a flashlight. If you hold the flashlight close to your eye, so you're kind of at 180 degrees coming back out, you should be able to see a spot of light from the lens. And it's easy enough to test if you have cameras around the house or even the camera on your phone. You'll realize that you do see false alerts. You can see reflections in a lot of places. But for example, if you have a hole in a wall or a hole in a ceiling tile, if you're shining a light in it like this and you do see a reflection, well, then you should check it out. Infrared can also be an indication. Here's just a general security camera. And this is just using a cell phone. to view it. So the cell phone is sensitive to the IR, the infrared signals. So if a camera has infrared lighting the area, you might be able to notice it this way. They don't necessarily, but it's just one more tool. I was able to also pick up a it's a camera that has all the infrared filters removed. Usually a lot of cameras that you get these days will have filters to make the picture better. This was, they advertised it for hunting because it shines out infrared light and it'll reflect even in the dark. So you're not shining a bright light. But without the IR filters, it will see through the dark plastic. So for example, this is a canary camera. You can kind of see where the lens is on this one. It's not really hidden, but on clock radios and other things that have the dark plastic, it's supposed to, it allows infrared through, but blocks your own vision. When using this kind of camera, you can actually see right through. You can see all the electronics that's behind the plastic. A helpful tool is thermal imaging. We're getting a little more pricier. Not everybody's going to have this available, but you can get them fairly inexpensive. Adapters that go on a cell phone, on an iPhone or an Android, or a pocket-sized version itself. I think those are under $600 or $700. But the price goes up. I mean, thermal cameras, you go to military grade cameras, you can spend $100,000 on a thermal camera, but that's not what we're concerned with. There's a lot of cameras out there that do have the resolution and the quality that's good for detection. The trouble with ones, even the smaller pocket ones, the resolution isn't that good. So sometimes it's hard to see, not just the resolution of the picture, but the differential between the hot and the cold, but they can help. We take the camera and we look, scan the area, particularly looking at vents, air vents, ceiling tiles, and looking for any indication of heat, which I should mention, cameras usually create a lot of heat when they're on. So if you have any small cameras and you touch it, you usually find it's hot. They can be designed differently, but it's just one tool. This is a PIR motion sensor up on a wall, and then we took a closer look. To me, this was suspicious because I know what these PIR cameras look like. But when we looked at it with the thermal camera, it lit up, bright as day. So that was definitely an indication of a camera in there. A PIR without a camera doesn't show that kind of heat. This one was a camera built into a motion sensor, but it also had infrared illumination. So similar to what we showed just looking with your camera, this one, the camera itself shows the bright illumination coming out from the unit, and then the thermal showed it up as well. So we'll move into radio signal detection. And again, you'll realize not every camera is going to have radio. Not every camera is necessarily going to have heat. Not every, or it could be hidden in a good way. There's a lot of levels in radio detection. Some of the basics, the cheapo models here, this little one here was, again, I think it was like $29 on Amazon. But they go up to $400 or $600 or $700. The trouble with these simple units is nowadays there's radio signals everywhere. So you turn the thing on, you're going to be picking up your Wi-Fi. You're going to be picking up, possibly your um, light switches on the wall, your cell phone, and TV, and all kinds of things. So, but for instance, if you use one of these and you hold it next to a tissue box and you're picking up a strong RF signal, well, maybe you should take a look at that tissue box. But the challenge is if you're using, sometimes people get these and they pick up signals and they start to get paranoid and they think there's cameras everywhere, but it's just the general RF that's in the vicinity. Video receivers have been around for a long time, but they're limited too because they only pick up analog signals and only in certain frequency ranges. So the frequency ranges are good. Used to be if you took one of these to Manhattan, you'd find all kinds of, if you go back 10 years, you'd find all kinds of cameras in hotels, in elevators, because it was easier to retrofit an elevator with a wireless camera than it was to wire one in. But for covert cameras these days, there's so many Wi-Fi and cellular based that, or they may be using other frequencies too, so they're not as effective. Here's some of the more advanced tools. Broadband receivers, which means they pick up a wide range of frequencies. They're usually more sensitive than the less expensive ones. They may have directional antennas, but it's a similar principle. You have to be near the signal to identify where it's coming from. You're not going to go into the middle of a room, turn it on, and then point it in a certain direction and say, oh, there's a camera over there. That's not the way it's going to work. There are more specialized tools. Here's a few examples. Berkeley Veritronics is a company in New Jersey. They make a couple of tools. The Yorkie is for cellular detection. This other one's called the Wolfhound. It's for cellular and DECT signals. They make a Wi-Fi detector as well. Fluke made this Wi-Fi detector, and they sold it to a new company called NetAlly. It's actually it's a good unit. The directional antenna on it works very well for Wi-Fi. But again, you're looking up into the thousands of dollars for these. Then there's a professional level, using spectrum analysis and other features. And that's where you're getting up into the expensive range, which is usually not your average user. But again, it's good to know if you know someone that does this professionally and has these tools, they can be very helpful. We mentioned Wi-Fi detection. A lot of cameras are available that use Wi-Fi. Some will be programmed to hop onto your existing Wi-Fi network. Others create their own network. But again, a camera doesn't have to use Wi-Fi, but it's one of those things that's worth looking at. On this slide, this image, we detected the signal that actually had camera in the name of the signal. So that was a clue. We could find the company name Mimosa. They make, they make cameras. But there's a lot of ways to look for Wi-Fi. There's apps that are generally free. Here's 3 that are popular. Fing, Wi-Fi Man, which stands for Wi-Fi Manager. That's made by Ubiquiti, and a generic Wi-Fi analyzer. You'll find a number of these. They're designed, as most of the Wi-Fi equipment is, they're designed for network analysis, and they're designed for IT people to use. So especially in the more complex units, you don't need half of the features, but some of the features that they do have can be useful. Here's 2 pieces of software that can run on a tablet or a laptop, NetSpot and Acrylic Wi-Fi. They give you a lot of detail, a lot of information about the signals that are in the area. What we tend to look at is we look at the SSID names. We look at the, if there's a strange signal, we can see the MAC address and see if it's maybe part of an existing access point. We'll also look at the security level. And in some cases, you'll see the particularly in a corporate environment, the Wi-Fi ID signals will all have a similar name, whether it's HQ 7925 or whatever number is. Then you may see one that says something different. That's you may want to figure out if that's a threat or a concern or not. Here's some of the hardware we showed before a little bit. Again, it's more affordable than some equipment, and they work pretty well, but they're also very useful for IT. So it's possible that your IT department may have such a unit, or they may want one. We were looking at one facility, and we noticed the channel. There was a Wi-Fi, which it clearly said a NVR in the ID, so we knew it was a network video recorder, and the channel was channel 14. But if you know anything about Wi-Fi, in the United States, channel 14 is illegal. It's unauthorized to use channel 14. So we realized that someone had purchased a camera and a network video recorder, probably from China, and had installed it. So as I mentioned, be thorough, right? Consider all the different areas that may need attention. There's a lot of different types of restrooms, handicap, family, a restroom in the executive office. There's cleaning people in and out of executive offices on a regular basis. Somebody could be, bribed to install something inappropriate. Locker rooms, fitness center, closets, nursing area we mentioned. Maintenance areas, in this case, there was a large pipe area, wire maintenance room that backed up against the restroom. So it was a huge area that only maintenance people had access to. It would have been an easy place to install a camera. So it's one of the areas we wanted to look at. Pipe chases, vents, we talked about those. There's a lot of little potential hiding places that are worth considering. If you're going to be looking in your restroom, there has to be line of sight for a camera to be effective, but you want to make sure you consider all the possibilities. A hand dryer had a tiny little compartment, a little flap, a little door, but there's a lot of space inside that door. So it would have been a good hiding place. Just things to be aware of. Clocks, of course, people are familiar with cameras hidden in clocks. Here's a few things that we came across that got our attention. In one handicap restroom, the ceiling tile was ajar. We take a closer look. There's a power supply up there. I go to look at the power supply, and I happen to recognize the manufacturer, this company, Radio Labs. They make power supplies for audio and video equipment. So I was suspicious, but we followed it. It turned out it was used for an alert strobe. So whoever did the wiring grabbed probably the nearest 12-volt power supply they could find, put it in there, but it caught our attention. Fitness center, back by the TV in the corner, there was something plugged in and hanging up there. When we took a closer look at it, it says transmitter. So it had a concern, but knowing a little bit about electricity, it says circuit tracer. So clearly, the electrician was probably testing a circuit, left it behind. But here's the consideration. If an executive was in there using the fitness center and came across this little red box and pulled it down and it says transmitter on it, they may raise a little stink. Now this was there's a little hole up there, and when we looked at that, the hole was just the right size for a camera. There was no camera there, but there was a power supply that was left behind. So there's evidence of something, happening. Another hole that was in a restroom. We looked closer up in the drop ceiling. Turns out there was pornography up in the drop ceiling. The security director said, well, listen, let's check the dates on those magazines. They were 1990s, so they had been there for quite a while. Minor concern, ladies' room and a men's locker room next door to a ladies' locker room, but the ceiling's connected. So getting up in one, you could see into the other through an air vent. This one seemed to be a little more serious consideration. The toilet stalls had air vents, next to each toilet. Behind the toilets was a pipe chase, but the pipe chase was not accessed through the restroom. The pipe chase was accessed from a public hallway in the building that was totally unrelated to the restroom area. So maintenance people could go in and out through the pipe chase easily. Just, part of our search, we're going back in there looking for anything suspicious. And I noticed there was a hole gouged into one of the air ducts. Actually, two of the air ducts, but this one in particular. It also caught my attention that it had been patched once, but was gouged open a second time. Just bending down and looking through, I can see right into the air vent of the toilet stall. We had a little test camera with us. We poked that in, keep poking, can see right into the toilet area. This is the area, this is the toilet stall we were looking at. There's the vent. Here's the camera coming through. So it was easy to poke through. Our camera had a light on it. Obviously that would be, that would draw attention to itself, but it was able to demonstrate what was possible. And this was the camera view that was possible. This particular case, how would you know? It was a maintenance pipe chase access way. Only maintenance people had access to it. Here's a camera in a ceiling tile. You may notice a little dark spot in the ceiling, but from a distance, you may never see it. Up close, you see, okay, there's a bigger hole gouged into the ceiling tile. From above, it was a quite low profile camera had been installed, and obviously they did it with whatever they had available. It's just double stick tape holding the camera there. It was very hard to see from a distance. What caught my eye on this second picture, the little yellow connector was a video connector, and it caught my eye, and I realized, oh yeah, yellow connectors are often used for video. So then we take a closer look and we found the camera there. Here's another one that's hard to notice, a camera above the door, but the FLIR thermal camera detected it pretty well. This telephone was in an office. We had picked up a RF signal that looked like a picture from the office. And when we tracked it, we saw this phone. It was sitting on a side shelf, but what was interesting about it was this phone had a power supply on it. None of the other phones in the office had electric power supplies. The camera had been, the phone had been opened up, and the camera had been installed inside, poking through the back of the phone. Very clever job. So that's most of what I wanted to cover. The little summary, plan and prepare a checklist. If you could get floor plans, that's great. Be thorough, take your time, allow enough time so that you're not, cutting corners if you really want to be thorough about it. Understand, the threats, devices, have your tools available, but also if you do obtain any more advanced tools, make sure you know how to use them. Practice. It can be, interesting to look around cameras that you have and see how they appear if you're trying to spot them with a flashlight or with a lens detector or something like that. Document your efforts and have a professional team available. Don't hesitate to call, because we're always happy to help. Here's a couple of points when dealing with considering having a professional involved. Initially, it'll establish a baseline for future inspections. It can take some of the burden off of yourself and your own people, but we can also provide training, for your staff. And probably what we find one of the more important things is when an incident does occur, we're available for consultation anytime. So it's good to know who to talk to. Thank you very much for your time.